What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Beat the Maze. It's Ian B.
And it's your girl, Jaysha.
And we have a special guest for you guys today, the one and only, my brother, Mr. Ernest Holmes.
How y'all doing?
Good.
Thanks for having me here.
We're good. How are
Happy
you?
to have you.
Yes.
Doing all right. Nice Sunday morning.
Yes.
Lovely Sunday.
It definitely is.
So, real quick, before we get started, we want to make sure that y'all please like, subscribe, follow us on social media. We want to interact with you. We want to make sure that we're building this community together. We're all here to beat the maze together. So please do that. All social medias at Beat the Maze Podcast.
Yes. So something we like to do before we start all of our episodes, Ernest, is go around and kind of talk about our week and how the week's been. So, Ian, how's your week been?
Week's been amazing, actually. I had a great week. I can't even remember what happened, but I just know I felt good all week. The highlight of my week has probably been like just going to the gym and being consistent with my health, and that kind of sets everything up to be successful. How are you?
My week was very busy. It was exciting. I got some new tasks at work, so getting closer to doing what I really like to do. But it became busy, and now it's like fizzling out to the start of a new week. So hopefully we can get some sense of normalcy this week. And Ernest, how's your week?
Yeah, I feel like busy with work, but like this was one of the first weeks that I had to stay in Atlanta for a while. I just came back from like a world tour with for work at like DC. I went to Jersey and I went to Austin. So
Oh wow.
I was ready to just like sit in Atlanta for a little bit. Finally got to see like Thor in theaters, which came out like I think a month ago. So Nope is next on my list. And I actually go on vacation in 2 days to Panama, so I'm like getting ready for that too.
Well, that sounds fun. Panama.
Where my family's from, my mom's side of the family.
Oh, okay. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, Ernest, tell us a little bit more about yourself and our audience, who you are, what you do, and
Yeah, so my name's Ernest Holmes. Nice to meet y'all. I grew up in a small, predominantly white town in New Jersey. I bring that up because it's part of my journey into what I do today, I feel. It took my first ever Black teacher, Miss Connery, who actually taught me computer science for me to fall in love with computer science and start coding my junior year of high school. Once I took that first class, I knew that that's the field and the tech industry was the pathway that I wanted to go down. Next thing I knew, my sister was going to Spelman College, saw the opportunities she got from going to Spelman, and decided to apply to this little HBCU called Morehouse College in Atlanta, right? Where if you asked me in high school that I was going to an all-Black male institution in Atlanta, that was probably the last thing on my list. I didn't even know what HBCU was, what a Morehouse was back then. But after going to campus and seeing everything that I saw my sister got out of Spelman, whether it was her whispering in my ear and my aunt who also went to Spelman, my grandparents, like my parents, I decided to make the leap to go to Morehouse, and definitely one of the best decisions I made in my life. At Morehouse, I majored in computer science and mathematics. I got a double major, and I was made aware about the connections to the tech industry at Morehouse, whether it was Google or Microsoft or PayPal or Twitter. There were companies coming to campus to recruit top Black talent for the industry, right? And I did everything in my power my freshman year to prepare and get an internship. Wound up getting the internship at Google, and I went out to California where I interned at Google for that first, summer 2016. Great summer. But I saw what it was really like to work in the tech industry, especially at a major tech company, and wound up doing 2 more internships at Google throughout my time at Morehouse, so 3 in total. And in 2019, when I graduated, decided to become a software engineer at Google full-time. I was working on this thing called Fuchsia. It's a new operating system that Google's making. Really dope. Our operating system was actually launched on all like Google Homes and with the screens and all that. So some of my code actually exists on all these devices. It was really cool to say. But a part of my Google journey is actually going when I first got to Morehouse, I was introduced to Google through this program called Google in Residence, where they actually send Google engineers to go and get back and teach at different HBCUs and Hispanic serving institutions. So that's how I got introduced to Google. And about a year into my time at Google, maybe a year and a half, the application was open for people to apply to be a Google residence professor. And I applied, and next thing I knew, like I thought they were gonna say I was too young because I just graduated, but I was selected to be the Morehouse School of Residence professor. So I was actually teaching on behalf of Google at Morehouse, all the freshman and sophomore computer science majors. Super dope experience. That was fall 2021. And if I could teach full time, I definitely would. I think the only thing holding me back is that financial component of being a professor, right? And that actually transitioned me into my new job now. Haven't even talked about CodeHouse yet, but with everything that I've been doing at Google and all my experiences, and then also teaching through Google Residence, and CodeHouse fits into this, of course, but they basically made up a role for me on this team called Education Equity, which I'm a technical program manager now, so helping lead initiatives and programs for technical talent from diverse groups to get into places like Google. So whether it's working with our HBCUs and our HSIs or people with disabilities, that's like basically my team takes care of all that kind of work, but specifically technical talent. And so now I'm helping like curate new programs and assisting current programs that we already have on the technical aspects of what the students should be getting out of it all. So that's kind of like my professional journey to where I am now. So I started that back in January, and that's the work I've been doing now.
Congratulations.
So how did CodeHouse come about, like with this whole story?
Yeah. So CodeHouse is like a side hustle, a pet project that turned into a full-time job. We started CodeHouse my senior year in 2019. And basically, after getting my first internship at Google, like I was consistently asked to talk at middle schools and high schools, community centers about what it's like being Black in tech, right? And really encouraging students who are younger than me that tech is an opportunity that they should really look into. Not only is there the financial component, but really the amount of impact we can have with technology, like it's the way of the future, right? So like we need to make sure that the future is built and created for us and by us, right? And when we looked at my senior year, myself, Tavis, who's a 2020 Morehouse grad, and my sister, JC, and some other students on campus were just like, what if we gave back in a larger way? And we basically created this, it's supposed to be a one-day event called Tech Exposure Day, CodeHouse Tech Exposure Day, where we invited 150 middle high school students from the Atlanta area to come to the Atlanta University Center to engage with HBCU students, but then also we invited all these different tech companies. So we had Google and Microsoft and Dell and IBM and a bunch of other companies there. So it was like the intersection between high school and middle school students, our HBCUs in Atlanta, and then also the tech industry. And more importantly, specifically, we asked for Black and brown people from these companies to come and represent for the students, right? So the students can see someone that looks like them, whether they're an engineer or a product manager or a director or whatever they are. And it was really cool. I think it went very well, considering it was like almost a college students who put it together. And the students had like a design thinking workshop, and I heard from a panel of Black and brown executives, and we had like booths set up so they can try the different demos and get the cool company swag. And really the feedback from that was like, hey, we can't wait until next year. We want to invite this school, or hey, we want to make sure that this class comes. And this is coming from the educators, this is coming from the students, this is coming from the faculty and staff from Morehouse, Holmes, and Clark. And I was graduating, and I was like, well, we're going to keep doing this. We're going to make this more official. So that next summer, I took time and like lucky or like very fortunate to talk about things aligning. My mother was an auditor for state of Texas for the last like 25 plus years. My dad practiced law in New York. So when you look at like who we need to help advise you to make a nonprofit, I had them like in-house, like in my family, right? So we decided to make CodeHouse into a 501c3. And so we officially were established as a 501c3 nonprofit in October 2019. So we're coming up on like 3 years, 4 years now? No, 3 years. Yeah, I could do that. 3 years coming up, right? So that led us into, sorry, what was it?
I said time has flown.
Crazy. And it's like, it feels like just yesterday that we started everything, but from there we had a second event, same thing at a larger scale for 400 students, and that was like right before the pandemic struck. Then COVID happened. We didn't know what we were going to do, so we flipped everything to become virtual, and which was really cool. Like one light in COVID was like we were able to expand this effort nationwide. So we had students from, Atlanta, of course, but back home from where JC and I are from, in Jersey, New York, to Chicago, where Tavis is from, to Oakland, where I was living at the time. We literally had students from like 26 different states represented at the event, 2,000 students nationwide tuned in. And it was like a virtual field trip. So like rather than going to class, they came to our event, gave out like $30,000 worth of prizes throughout the whole event, whether it's like MacBooks and Xboxes and all this other stuff, but really to just inspire them, encourage them to come into the tech industry, which was really dope. And then basically from there, we always had this concept of just like this impact was great and like a wide net model, like impacting and expose students as much as we can, but we knew that there's like more depth of the work that we can be doing. And when we look at like my college experience or any of my co-founders or team members' experiences, we saw that students were dropping out of the computer science field or the technology like majors at high rates. And when we looked at some of the issues, one, students couldn't afford to go to college. Two, they weren't getting exposed to the technical skill sets that they needed or the professional development that they needed early on. And then three, they just didn't have a community of like, whether it's mentors or even a horizontal community of people to support them going through it all. And so that's where the CodeHouse Scholars Initiative came into play. And we made this whole program where incoming freshmen going to our HBCUs can get $20,000 in scholarships, a 4-week summer bridge program before they even get to college, and then a mentorship program throughout their freshman year where they get a collegiate mentor, big brother, big sister, and then a industry mentor to act as like a, guiding light into the industry. Yeah. And wanted up pitching it to PayPal. We got in front of a few VPs at PayPal, and they were like, "Oh, we'll give you $1.5 million for this." This is a crazy thing to even say, right? And that was like back in late 2020. And next thing we knew, we had these 29 scholars selected going to Morehouse, Fleming Clark. And it was like a real thing, which is like bizarre to even say now, right? So that was our first cohort of scholars. They did very well. They're all most of them had internships after even their first semester. So I think like 24 of them had internships out of 29. And now we're on our second cohort of scholars. We expanded our efforts to North Carolina A&T and Howard. And due for Google gave us $1.1 million to help us expand to other institutions. And we have 43, and they actually just finished up this last week of their 4-week summer program. I actually did that on campus at Morehouse. And so they were taking classes with my sister, and we had another instructor actually from my hometown in Jersey. We had all these TAs set up. We had a program manager who was actually my aunt help out, and then like we had a residential director. And like I'm very like happy with how the summer program came out, because this was the first time we did it in person. Last year was virtual, and they got to go visit like Microsoft's new Atlanta campus. They're supposed to go to Google, but we had actually a COVID scare, so we had to cancel that. But a lot of like genuine like community building. Like the students apparently were like crying when like students are going home to their flights and stuff like that to with one another, which is great to see, because that's what we like. We're family oriented with CodeHouse, and like it seems like they're just 43 additions to the family.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Like, were you about to say something?
No, I've been talking for a minute. Sorry.
No, you're all good. You're all good. That's what the people are here for. First off, congratulations. We've known each other for about 3 or 4 years now, and I've like seen from the outside, but to actually see you and hear from your perspective what starting CodeHouse was like, it's amazing. Truly, like, congratulations to you, to the entire CodeHouse team, and to all the scholars that have the ability and the just the chance to learn from everybody in you guys' network. So what are some of the things that maybe were a bit challenging, whether it was setting up the 501c3 or actually kind of getting on the road Because you guys have had so much success, but at the same time, I know it's not easy.
I would say for me personally, it's just, well, it's one thing to have a vision. A lot of people have ideas all the time, but like executing out those ideas and that vision always comes with its own trials and tribulations. So like me being the president of the organization, just making sure that like if I have a vision that like I also help put in the scaffolding to make sure it gets done effectively. So the one thing about CodeHouse, like no one works on it full time. So everyone's doing this on part-time. And that takes a whole nother toll, right? Like it's like you got to be very accommodating or being like understanding like someone has a job and like now they're like have a project they're finishing up for their real job. Like, okay, like they need to not work as hard on CodeHouse, but like we still need to get stuff done. So like expectation setting is like something I shouldn't say been struggling with, but something that's always going to be a struggle until we hire some full-time people. And the people management, sometimes like you're hearing like the names I'm saying, that they're close family and friends. So you're gonna run into a lot of issues when working with family and friends. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but always having some level of understanding of like this is the vision that we're all putting together and we all have buy-in for this. So if we want to make sure it gets done effectively, make sure that you're communicating that out correctly. Right. And those are still things that I'm learning right now to this very day. So learning how to make sure I'm effectively communicating, and I have a lot of growing with that to do as well. So I would even say like the logistics of setting up a nonprofit and all that kind of stuff, easy. Paperwork is things you can figure out. There's like a plan for that. But like when you actually talk about building out a team, since it's coming from your vision, like it's on you to figure it out. And if you're not intentionally working through that, that's where things start falling through the cracks. So yeah, it's a learning process with it all.
So what are the actual logistics of like building a 501(c)(3)? Like what do you need to do that?
Yeah. So 501(c)(3) is actually the declaration that you are a tax exempt organization for the IRS, right? So all a nonprofit is just like a corporation, an entity, a business entity. So the same way that you'll set up like your own corp or your own, I can't think of all the different
LLC, social proprietors.
Thank you. The first step is to set one of those up, whether you want it to be an LLC or S corp or whatever, and you get your EIN number. Then you file with the IRS to get that 501(c)(3) status, and it's as simple as like this 1023-EZ form that you have to fill out. I'm saying it's that simple, but like a nonprofit comes with a lot of rules and stipulations that you need to adhere to. So as long as you're okay with that, I think the main one that you want to always pay attention to is like the flow of income. So if you bring in, let's say $1 million, at least the majority, so at least 51% of that has to go directly into the nonprofit, into the business itself. So not paying employees or staff or whatever you're going to call them, right? So in theory, you can raise $1 million, you can give yourself, like $499,000 for your salary, but ethically that's always going to look bad. And I'm always happy to share that like CodeHouse's indirect costs, meaning people like paying staff and like all the members, it's at like 6.5% the last time we did like our calculations, which is super low, so I always want to keep that number as low as possible, especially when we talk about giving back. And but so once you file the IRS, then you either get approved or not, but probably gonna get approved and put everything else. You need like board of directors, you need at least a president, treasurer, and a secretary on your team for the official paperwork. And we can talk about like logistics and picking a board of directors and stuff like that if you guys want to, but then every year you do need to submit your financial statements to the IRS, and there's like a long like form that you have to go through, making sure like, hey, did you do this? Did you not do this? Do you have 3 board meetings like in the year? And there's like a lot of things that you have to follow, but as long as you follow those high level like rules and regulations, then you'll be good.
Thank you for that. I wanted you to point those out because we I think a lot of people do think about starting nonprofits and just kind of, I mean, the internet is wide, but there to have someone blatantly write it out of like, these are the things, the big key points. I think that could be helpful for someone listening.
Yeah.
What would you say has been, well, how do you time manage? Like, what's your superpower? Is it a planner? Is it like an assistant? Is it a calendar? Like, how do you make sure you are like showing up to your best abilities where you have to?
I would say my parents really installed a lot in my sister and I growing up. I everything the person I am, the man I am today is because of my mom and dad. Like they're I call my parents every day, like religiously. Like it's like probably I think I've talked to my parents more than the average person does, not to their parents probably, right? But from an early age, they always put me in like a lot of like whether it's karate and soccer. My sister and I did musical theater growing up since like the fourth grade. So like I just did like a lot while on top of course maintaining like honor roll and like all that good stuff in class. So I think like the work ethic has always been there for me. And I'm very big on like if I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna get it done. I don't have always the healthiest time management skills put in place, but I do love working off of like to-do lists. So even if I can turn my camera around, I have like my Google to-do list, my personal to-do list, and my CodeHouse to-do lists. And like I'll live off of that whiteboard for the most part. And then if I'm like traveling, which I have been doing a lot for work, like I write everything down. Like just putting it down and writing does like a lot, right? And so whatever that looks like for you, I know I always carry notebooks around with me. I rarely use them. Like my Google Notes or like not my iPhone Notes app looks crazy with like to-do lists all the time. Right. So I think that's what keeps me sane. But I like it like nice and quick. And I like to just always organize myself mentally. I know like this is probably terrible, but like I do it literally in my head when I wake up. I'm like, okay, these are the things I need to get done. And it's been working out for me. But if I was you, I would probably write it down somewhere so then you definitely remember.
No, I definitely understand. I'm a sticky notes person, so I have sticky notes everywhere. And like I agree with you. Sometimes you just have to get out your head because there's a lot. I call it like running tabs, and we always have so many running tabs going on, and you're gonna overlook some tab because
at some point
you have so many things that you have to focus on, or like there's that one moment where you go in the kitchen and you went in the kitchen to clean something up, but then you forgot you left the bowl in the living room, and then you get distracted with something else.
Right before this call, I was like, dang, I forgot to send this email out and I had to write it down on my whiteboard. I didn't write it down beforehand, so.
That's true. That's true. So how do you work with like, so for like that instance, when you kind of maybe like drop the ball in an area or don't show up to the best areas, how do you work with kind of giving yourself that grace to like, instead of, because I think oftentimes people beat themselves down about things that they might mess up, or we're human, realistically things will mess up. How do you give yourself grace and continue to, okay, I might have slipped on this moment, but I'm going to come back strong and keep that work ethic like consistent?
Yeah, I think it's always like taking ownership. I think it's very easy in life in general to like victimize yourself with different things. But taking ownership in like what you could have controlled is very important. And I think I've always tried to practice that. And I guess like also just talking about like time management as well, just like having a full-time job and doing this on the side, like really just setting expectations for yourself on like I know that there's certain hours during the day and like I need to focus on my Google work. And it's very enticing, especially when I was a software engineer. Like you can't get me passionate about working on like a back end USB like driver stack when like literally like black people were dying in the streets. Like that was like 2020, like during the peak of like the Black Lives Matter protests and everything. And my like motivation was to work on CodeHouse because I knew that was actually having a tangible impact in our communities, right? So, I think I also just recognize right now, like I'm 24 and I'm like doing a lot. I feel so like always like understand like sometimes if I mess up, I'm not perfect, and being okay with that, even though I'm definitely like a perfectionist. And then when it comes to, I had a thought in my head. I think it was going back to just like balancing out. Like I do try to set expectations, and one thing I'm trying to work on now with CodeHouse is being able to trust and delegate tasks out.
Yeah.
So that's something I've struggled with, and that's also another struggle with like running a nonprofit, being like someone like myself. I'm like, I want to know everything, which is a terrible thing to do, right? It does come with a history of like trying to trust people and then not being able to, right? Especially when you have something like a nonprofit that's like, you know, my name is like on this nonprofit, so if something doesn't happen well or doesn't go like the way I would want it to go, like it goes back to me, right? So I do have that, but I'm like trying to make sure that I delegate it out, and like I'm excited for things coming up this year with CodeHouse because just trusting different people in my team to work on different aspects of CodeHouse that I haven't been able to focus on, and like coming back and saying like all the documentation right now, and like it's like timelines and sketched out beautifully. I'm like, okay, like I need to be able to do this more. So that's what I'm trying to work on now. That's like my main area of growth. And it's like trusting people, delegating and trusting people to meet my standards.
Yeah, it's actually a perfect segue into the question I had, because you guys do so much, and now it's not only just CodeHouse like Tech Exposure Day, but it's events and consistent communication with your scholars. So how did you and how do you continue to pick people to your team that you know, or that you think, at least if you don't know them, will be beneficial to the organization?
I would definitely say I have had some trial and errors. There's been some people that have joined the team and like, you know, it just didn't work out. And no harm, no foul. This is also like a lot of people work on it out of passion for the work it is. And I think that's like another barrier. It would be very different if I was like paying everyone full-time salaries and like, okay, not this is your job, right? That's a very different attitude. So I think the main thing I look for is like people who are passionate about this work and are willing to put in like their 20% of their time into CodeHouse when they do have a full-time job. And also making sure I have grace with that, because it's like, hey, like sometimes like things don't get done. And I'm like, we need this done. I'm like, okay, wait, this is not a full-time job. And like you can't like there's many days that I'm up until 3, 4 just working on, because I was working on Google stuff all day, and then I need to switch over to CodeHouse stuff. And I can't expect that from anybody or everybody. So and that's it is what it is. But when I'm looking at a new team member, it's someone first that shows up they're passionate about and like genuinely wanting to just help. And a lot of people that they come up to me all the time like, hey, like let me help out. Like I want to help out. And if I see that they're serious about it, because people say that all the time as well. Like we're at a party, I'm like, oh, I want to help out. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, let me know. But when someone like is real about it, I feel like I can discern that out. And then I might give someone like one task, like, hey, can you help us out with like this small project? And if that goes well, it's like, cool. I think like if you can be in charge of this jurisdiction for me, like that would be very helpful. And then we can grow from there. That's kind of how I've been playing it right now. I think right now we're looking at scalability for CodeHouse, and with that comes with more team members and more fundraising, and potentially even looking at full-time people for CodeHouse, because I think we're getting to that point because it's becoming a lot. It's exciting, but it's also scary, I guess.
Yeah.
There's two aspects of it. You have not only the community service aspect, where it's the face front, but you also have the business aspect, which people don't talk about too often when it comes to nonprofits, of all the stuff that goes behind the scenes to get this rolling, like,
and to keep it going. Yeah,
for sure. Fundraising, no joke. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions about nonprofits is like, oh, you didn't worry about raising money. It's like, well, if you have no money, like,
what do you do?
Nothing.
You can't do that.
You can get paid, like, and I'm very big on like people should get paid for this work. Even though like the amount of work that people do for CodeHouse right now versus how much they get paid does not compare. Like people put hours and hours into CodeHouse, which I appreciate. But yeah, you need to focus on making sure you raise those funds so that the company can stay sustainable. You need to treat it like a company, even if the revenue is not coming from like customers or like people buying things from you. It's still like a real organization, a real company.
Yeah.
So how do you fundraise as a nonprofit? Like, do you just send a lot of emails? There's a lot of meetings, or is there a certain type of kind of pathway, order to things?
Y'all see me on North Side with the sign and like a cup in my hand. Yeah, we've been very fortunate, like through my network, JC's, Talus's, like having people who are connected in their companies to be able to provide funds. I was actually so crazy. I was just got bombarded by two of my friends who were trying to raise money for something that I won't blow their business about, but they were asking me all my advice, and it's like the main thing that people care about is buying into a narrative and buying into a narrative with a plan, right? So you need a narrative and you need a plan. So when it came to raising money for Tech Exposure Day, it's like, hey, the first one, I'm very big on like how can you have as much impact as possible with raising the least amount of money. So the first Tech Exposure Day, 150 students. The buy-in for companies like, hey, I just want your presence. If you can, I want you there with a booth. I want representatives, swag to give out, and that's like easy for companies. Like they're always going to have representatives to come and support. They're always going to have swag to give out to kids. Now when it comes to you asking for like money, they're like, I don't know where that is or whatever, and that's fine. But the buy-in was like, I just want representation there. And I said, but if you can, we need to feed these kids because it's the middle of their school day and they need to eat. So if you can help me raise money for that, I would appreciate it. And a lot of companies could, but some companies could. And I think that year we probably raised like 3,500 comes into my head, 3,500. And that helped cover all the food. And then we got t-shirts for the kids. Nice, easy event. The second one, we're trying to get a little more like, hey, no, for real, like it'd be like if you give us $1,000, we're trying to have 400 students this year, like that covers food, that covers shirts, that covers like a bunch of other expenses, some prizes for the kids. And we probably raised like maybe $12,000 that year, something like that. And then when you look at the virtual one, I feel like I'm saying greedy, but it's always going back to the community, right? But that one we were like more like, hey, no, the minimum buy-in is $5,000 because we have this platform that we had to pay for. Maybe I think the minimum buy-in was like maybe 1,000, and then we had like 4 speaking positions, and we're like, hey, that's $10,000, and then like the high end was like $25,000. And from that event, we raised like $140,000 for all the companies for everything that we were doing. It was like cool. Like people were willing to put money in and like talk about the impact that we're having. They're like getting money for thousands of students across the nation. And then so for the scholars initiative, this is like a lot of money that we're asking for, right? Like, you heard me say earlier, 1.5 million, 1.1 million. But when I was breaking it down, like what do students need? They need financial support, they need technical skill building, they need professional development, they need mentorship, right? The buy-in and the number I really want to give each student was $50,000 in scholarships or 40,000, which covers like 1 year of schooling.
Yeah, school year.
I'm focused on that first year, right? But we dropped it down to 20,000 because it was like expectation setting, right? It was like, I don't know if I can keep asking for this much money at this rate. So we did 20,000. But the pitch to the company is like, hey, if the buy-in is minimum $50,000, which will support 2 students in scholarships, so $40,000 goes straight to the kids for scholarships, and then 10,000 supports like all the programming costs, whether it's paying staff, whether it's all the miscellaneous stuff, and like showing them like this is a plan, like these are financial goals, and like having all that written out. This is the team that we'll need to hire for it. This is the exact programming that we want for the whole summer. This is like programming that we want for the mentorship program throughout the school year. This is the return of investment that you might get. So whether it's hosting informationals, hosting workshops, writing event tours, getting resume books from our students, all of that is what was shared with the company. But a part of it, before we even get to those logistics, is like sharing the narrative, like, hey, like I'm a young Black man who went to Morehouse, studied computer science, interned at Google, was a software engineer at Google. Now I can say like I taught students in this space as well. Since I just went through the pathway, I have insights on what can really benefit these students, and they like sharing that narrative, and like Tad was sharing his story, like how I was his mentor coming into Morehouse and why he decided to go into computer science and go to Morehouse. Me sharing that my sister was my mentor, you know, and it's a brother sister duo. Like people love that narrative. So like sharing our stories, showing them how passionate we're about this work. I think it's not, it doesn't go without saying, like the fact that we're not doing this full time and we're doing this on the side also plays into that, because like, dang, like they're actually doing this out of love for the organization, not because I don't know, like I don't know, I was gonna say clout, but or like I don't know, like for raising funds for us and like taking $200,000 salary because this nonprofit's making millions of dollars. It's not any of that. It's like just trying to help these students out and open pay it forward and opening doors for these students. So I was kind of going all over the place a little bit right there, but
No, but you're fine. I
think
was
it's
following
important.
you. I was following you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what I took from that was like one, relationship building, but like
That's key.
consistency in showing, actually putting action to your words, not just saying, hey, we're going to do these things for this kids, but like, I have the proof. I did it. Two other of my co-founders did it. This is what we know we need. This is what we've done in the past. And we continue to do more every year. Like that would be enticing to someone who wants to donate and wants to be involved in this vision that you're building out.
Yeah, and I would agree that it also is a certain level of clout, like to the companies that first got in when y'all did your very first tech exposure day. Like, oh, we saw CodeHouse when nobody else believed, or y'all could say this company believed in us and nobody did. Like, you know, and that goes back into what Jace was saying, like relationship building, and that's so important. Somebody told me one time that you make money and like you get stuff in life based off of relationships. Putting your resume in is cool, and you know, you have your story, but people want to feel connected with you. They want to, and that's how we are as humans. We connect with each other. So I love it.
I love that too. And this is actually advice that I always share with my students anytime I'm like talking to a group of students. Like, you know, they start off with the saying your net worth, or your network is your net worth, right? So like the more people you know, the more wealthy you are. If you take that one step further, it's like it's not who you know, it's who knows you. So the more people who know who you are, you know, that's where you start having a personal brand that you can start repping and other people can know about that brand. You take that one step further, it's who knows you and who can speak well on your behalf, right? So you always want to have a personal brand where like people are bought into your story, they're bought into who you are. So even if you're not in the room, they're speaking well on your behalf, right? Whether that's in a corporate setting, a personal setting. And that's what I always try to set that standard for my scholars or the students I work with, so they start doing the same thing, because I think that's what really benefited CodeHouse a lot, because people were able to speak well on my behalf, Taz's behalf, Jason's behalf, when we're not even in there, you know. And that's when deals start getting made and hopefully more money starts being brought in and stuff like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Ernie, thank you so much for, you know, allowing us to share a little bit of your day. We like to wrap up every episode for our guests with a bag drop. So if somebody was not listening,
which they obviously should have been, but
they should have been, but if they weren't and they're like, well, I'm just trying to wait till he gets the point. I'm trying to see like that one boom, mic drop, bag drop, what would that be for you?
I almost want to use the last thing I just said as a bag drop. If I had to say one other point, and one thing that I think I live by is be proactive with everything that you do, right? You have an idea, don't just talk about it, be about it, start working on it. Make a tangible plan to achieve that idea or that goal or that vision that you have. So that's what we did with CodeHouse, and 3 years later, this is where we are. So I'm thinking about 10 years, and it's like, dang, I wonder where we can go. So be proactive, I think, is the advice I love to give out.
That's beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here. You guys can find Ernest. Where can they find you on social media and CodeHouse?
Oh, my social media, I think like Instagram is Ernest_Holmes, but CodeHouse, thecodehouse.org on our website, or all our socials are just CodeHouse.org on Instagram and Twitter, LinkedIn, and all that.
And you guys know that you can also find Beat the Maze podcast here on YouTube, podcasts, all social media platforms at Beat the Maze Podcast. You can find me on all social media platforms at Jace Robinson. And Ian, where can they find you?
Y'all can find me at a new @ on all social media platforms at Ian A. Barrett with an underscore at the end.
He finally got it together. We had like 3 different usernames across like 3. I was like, no, we gotta uniformity. But once again, thank you, Ernest, for coming on. We really, really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you in CodeHouse Excel.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. And we will catch you guys, as always, on Mondays at 8 a.m.
Yes.
Have a good one.